Dear friends, glad to meet you all on Feygin Live. It is Monday, 27th of June, 10 p.m., and we're starting our stream. Day 124 already, damn it. Olexiy Arestovych, glad to see you. Good evening, everybody. Alright, we have over 85,000 people watching us live. The usual request to everybody, please share links to that stream in your social. Please leave your likes. That is the only way to promote our streams. And subscribe to mine and Alexei's, and subscribe to Privateer Station if you're watching it live in English. Let's start with Kremenchug missile hit, if you have any data. Right now, we got the data that it says 10 dead, 40 wounded. I am quite sure this number will change to the worse, because there is also fire that sprung out and the roof of the whole complex collapsed inward. There is some data that there were about 1,000 people there. Strategic bombers of Russia hit from Kursk Oblast with X or Kha-22 rocket. It is a very old and very imprecise weapon, and they were hitting at the middle of the city. So this is a missile terror straight from Russia. I'm not even talking about Kharkiv, Kiev, Odessa, and other cities that they're targeting daily. So we understand that right now it's the phase of missile terror aimed at civilian population. The general radius of X-22 Russian missile is about 600 yards, so it cannot be used for any precise hit. They're basically violating international law and the rules of war. And we basically can say that this is sort of a missile bucha, an extended missile terror. It is the new phase of this war. Alright, I have a question. Is it completely 100% sure that this came from Kursk region of Russia, or did it come from Belarus? Frankly, missile strikes are coming at us from all directions, or most of them. Today our intel published another information that there may be more strikes from the territory of Belarus. I'm rather sure they will continue these strikes further. So were those hits from bombers or from stationary complexes? So Kharkiv is being hit by Iskanders. Those are stationary machines, and also field artillery. Nikolaev is being hit with Hurricanes, Uragans, and Smerch Russian MLRS systems. Odessa is being hit, and Kiev are being targeted with Russian cruise missiles. Kiev was mostly targeted from Belarus. Odessa is being hit from the Black Sea. Kursk region, that data needs more verification, targets different parts of our country. So they're using all nomenclature of their missiles that they have, or rocketry that's available for them. By the tempo, it's about the second half of March, similar to that. So on average, it was about 50 missiles per day at the whole territory. So how would you explain that? Are they getting ready to pull Belarus into this conflict? I think there are different reasons here. What are the main ones? Reason number one, it is the reaction on what Russian Federation considers to be a toughening of the West and implementation of new sanctions against Russia. What one can notice that during the last several days, maybe even couple of weeks, despite of all that terror, the message and the content of this war did change. One of the most obvious and one of the brightest parts of it was the mocking of Putin at G7 with the nude torso and stuff. That he's riding nudie on the horsey. What does it mean? It means they burned the bridges. Putin is a very self-conscious creature, and the West did make fun of him. So them doing it essentially means that they are, for real, joining this war. They're targeting him. They're basically bullying him on this, and it means they burned some bridges behind them. The decision is made. They are not going to roll back. Otherwise, why would you attack him personally like that? And likely means that they will be aiming at finishing him. Gauging by the decisions made there, military, humanitarian, political, and other spheres, timeless support for Ukraine, including very painful decisions in terms of their effect on Russia, giving us mid to far-range anti-air defense systems. And second, new sanctions that Russia is facing. It's gold exports, budgetary loss based on energy sources and other exports, and also personal sanctions. They made an interesting trick that Biden signed a paper increasing customs fee duties by 35% for any energy materials arriving from Russia. Essentially, this money will be thrown into the monetary support for whatever they do for Ukraine. So this is sort of a Jesuit move by states where every kilo of something or a liter of oil and gas sold to the West is paying in part for the West's military support of Ukraine in this conflict. So the chain is locked. That reminds of a medieval, one of the worst tortures, when they would put something on a person that causes him suffering by his own movement. So it's not even a torturer or anybody doing it to him. Things like that break the will pretty fast. So in addition to that, Ukrainian military started working very effective. And it's not just HIMARS, although they're very precise. Where do those systems work now? They're in the east. According to some data, it was HIMARS that hit Izum. All four of them worked on Izum. Some of them did. They hit one of the command posts, and actually not one, but several. One is confirmed, the rest are still being researched. On the Russian public networks, there was a wave of panic, and they were screaming that Ukraine has started the hunt for command outposts. And we got 4 munition depots in one region. Near Donetsk, we got 12 of them. And our general command said that we also used some of the .U missiles and the HIMARS and artillery. And all these strikes, they diminish Russian capability of further advancement. So it's a complex reason, a complex effect on their front. What's behind all that, all these events? It means that both sides are escalating the conflict. Both sides are digging in. The main thing that I have hope for is that the West understood what our president said. It is not the time yet for negotiations. Because that emotional thing with the jackets off and mocking of Putin, that basically gave me an idea that they are going to break him, physically break him. Yeah, they seem to be pretty upset at him. So 124 days were needed for the West to realize that they will not be able to negotiate with Putin and they'll need to break him. That's the only way. And it appears that they are ready, because immediately there were other news that the Western group of NATO was increased from 40,000 to 300,000. very close to the Cold War. Yes, during the Cold War, they had 400,000 people. And one needs to understand that the might of their group is basically 1 worth 5 of Russian soldiers. So if you look at 300, that's an equal of 1.5 million soldiers on the Russian side. So it is as if Russia called for a full conscription and gathered the full army on the border. So that's combined with Lithuania that is blocking Russian cargo to Kaliningrad, Russia claiming that they'll be put some nuclear weapons on territory of Belarus, and Belarus make an amendment to their constitution that they can host nuclear weapons. And all that story that basically also shows us as soon as they break the charter or the treaty of the nuclear non-proliferation, the West will join this war on an even higher scale, which I think is likely to happen. It's almost inevitable. So, for Kremenchuk missile strike, Ukraine military, are they going to make Russia answer for that, pay for that? Yes, one needs to understand they will pay for that. They'll pay a lot, and there are a lot of tasty targets on their side that we can reach out to. Which target could fall, for example? On the Russian side, we are hitting just military targets. That's not even a matter for discussion. But even within military targets, we have a huge collection, and it's pretty bright. So yesterday you guys hit the second oil rig in the ocean, right? In the sea? Yeah, we did, and in the near future we'll hear about its destiny. All right, 335,000 are watching us live. 68,000 of them left their likes. We've been live for about 12 minutes, and people who are watching us know that you do need to share links to that cast in your social media. That's the only way to promote our streams. Otherwise, Google does not propagate that in any fashion because it is dedicated to the matters of war. And in Russia, they do need to see that because they're going bananas there after watching their propaganda TV for 24 hours. It is horrible what they say and how they think there. So please share there as well. So, about the fronts, what's happening on Kherson, Zaporozhye, Severodonetsk, Izum, and of course, Kharkov. Let's make a quick run and then go back to Madrid and NATO. Mark, we don't need to run over that there. I would say, for the most part, let's pay to the military and political component. On the front, there was not much change, even in Lysychansk. Enemy tried to approach roads near Lysychansk, got their butts kicked and went back. They're overly overwhelmed us by a factor of 20 to 1 in that area, but we still manage the fighting and resistance capability. So they likely will try to encircle Lysychansk. Popasna group will likely turn towards Bakhmut. And I do hope that these maneuvers, one can understand where they will lead. They'll lead to another defense line. So they were going for, 10 miles for 40 days earlier. Let's see how they go here. But anyway, no major changes on the whole front compared to the previous day. You see that Bakhmut in the middle of the map, and from there they'll try to get to the road and to get to Kramatorsk, which is at 11 or 10 o'clock of this map, and then maybe go to Konstantinovka, which is at roughly 8.5 from Bakhmut. So the stakes are going higher. Summing it up, the evening is becoming more nail-biting. I don't know how long Russia can sustain such an effort for, because the main reason, I don't think they have enough resources. I suspect they will be hitting us every day, but I don't see how they can maintain such a tempo. Of course, they're assembling some more missiles, and they assembled some during the last 3 months. But roughly they shot about 3,000 at us, and their capacity would top at about 300 for these 3 months. So the current rate of fire is unsustainable for them. Speaking of sanctions, One of them also implies prohibition of semiconductor embargo on semiconductors. Two-thirds of them are manufactured by Taiwan. And with this tempo of wasting their resources, very soon they'll have to switch to stone axes. Oh, I know, they likely will. They're remarkable like that. So we also have another sensation. I forgot to say it's the day of sensations. Borrell in Europe stated a sensational thing today. He said that EU should revise the principle of 100 votes to 100% votes to adopt any declaration or law. So, how quickly do you think they can solve this problem? Last week, they've been demonstrating a rather good capacity for restocking their troops. So, looking back at Madrid, will Zelensky be partaking from distance, or was he invited? And Barrel is responsible for European Union, not for NATO. I know, but NATO seems to have a similar problem. So otherwise, Russia will likely be transferred from strategic friend to strategic enemy position in the NATO documents. That is a very serious story. It's pretty much tectonic shift. Norway is giving us some anti-missile defenses, by the way. There is a ton of things happening there. And I'm going to Madrid. I'll be there tomorrow and I'll meet with people and talk about different subjects, and probably will even talk about that pedophile who fled and who is living there now from Russia. So, G7. They apparently have agreed upon something, and whatever they announced to us is just part of it. In your view, when we're talking about the weapons supply, and understand it's not synchronous when we speak about States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Eastern countries, in your opinion, does it mean that the situation will depend upon the quantity and qualitative characteristics of what becomes available for the Ukraine army? If, for example, there'll be not 4 HIMARS but 100, right? Well, you're basically resuming what was discussed, and you're highlighting one of the opinions that was being tossed around. And a similar statement was made as a result. For example, the contract with Germany, about 3,000 Matadors, that is a personal anti-tank weapon that is better than Javelin and some other contracts about anti-air systems supply. So when I was reading about some of these news and statements, it does gather together into a picture of them being ready to break Putin's back. And I think it might have been a result of slow exposure to hits like on Kiev and other parts. Like Kiev has about 50 working embassies at the moment. And they were slow about many things, but right now the speed of these decisions is remarkable. So they're also right now discussing the matter of supporting Ukraine economically, similar like Marshall's Plan for Europe after the Second World War. And there is another meeting coming soon where representatives of different countries, economic groups are getting together to figure out how to aid Ukraine. And my sense is they finally agreed that they do need to break Putin's regime's back. And when I saw them mocked Putin about a shirtless picture, that was suggested by Johnson. And they laughed, but they sort of supported it, saying, yeah, he's riding horses, bare-chested, so we gotta show the pecs. That's what it looks like, yes. All right, let's go back to Lithuania and Belarus. Regarding Lithuania, it is reported today that several ministries were attacked digitally today in Lithuania, and we do understand that this is coming from Russia, likely Russian Ministry of Defense. And with all that escalation, there is more and more questions about Belarus and whether they will join or not. And one can probably not guarantee 100% that they won't. Nobody can guarantee 100% because they already technically are participating in this military aggression, starting from the words, "I'll show you where the attack on Belarus was planned by Lukashenko." So it is hard to say they will not join the effort. They already have done so, and now they're giving ammo and equipment to Russian Federation. But we're talking about the danger and possibility of Belarus participating in the hot part of conflict with its own troops. And they recently moved a couple battalions to Suwalkovsky corridor on the border with Poland, that area. And they are doing some hidden events that looks like could be, as usual, military training, or could be also a hidden effort to increase their army, to get some conscripts. And our president already turned to Belarus people saying that you are being tried to being pushed to join the war, so think about it. But if Lukashenko would decide, or should he decide to join Putin's effort, that may cause a very negative reaction of the West. Up to direct threats by NATO in that Suwalkovsky corridor, and Belarus may find itself in a very unpleasant situation, including even the question of what would Belarus people do if he decides to announce that. And at the worst, they could bring maybe 10, 12,000 people. He threatened 80. Well, I don't know where he will get 80. Maybe with all the reserves, that's one thing, the number, and then the battle-worthy troops is a much smaller group. Even if give him benefit of the doubt and say he brings 20,000, it's still not enough to change the situation on the front fully. So we don't know what Putin is doing with Lukashenko. Maybe he is forcing him with some unorthodox matters like, adult toys in his nether regions. It is hard to imagine what would be the last tool to force him to do that, and I don't think it is anything rational that may cause Lukashenko to send his troops to fight in Ukraine. It likely might be something irrational, because he already showed several times that he might be an emotional leader versus the logical one. But we are saying on our side that stop it, think before you do anything. And the signals from the West basically follow tune. But Moscow will continue pressure. If Moscow has nowhere to go and they need to, they will continue. They will force either him or the next one who's coming after him. And they will try to persuade him, but it is impossible to gauge their real effect on him. So in the nearest future, we'll see what happens. There are some signs of Belarus troops getting ready to possible active warfare, but preparation does not mean the actual engagement. And they have shown similar signs before to the media and the society, but it did not result in anything. And yeah, he's in a more treacherous position, unlike Moscow, because Moscow is one thing with their nukes. Belarus presidential palace can be eradicated with one direct missile hit. So, and also, Russia has made their choice, and Europe is already making theirs about a decision to finish and be done with Putin's regime. So it's up to Belarus to join that bandwagon of the regimes that will be toppled, or they may find a different path in this situation. because if they or should they decide to join the hot conflict, they may be dragged into a hot conflict with Poland, Lithuania, and other neighbors around them as well. Nobody promised them integrity and that they will remain untouchable. So yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because there are people watching us, and I'm sure they're watching. They're being watched. They're watching us from Belarus as well. More people watching us. We're 25 minutes streaming, over 400,000 watching us live, and a lot of likes. So thank you. Please continue doing that. All right, one more thing. Let's touch upon Madrid. Do you think anything sensational may happen there tomorrow? Anything like, let's discuss membership for Ukraine in NATO? I'm not expecting anything remarkable from that meeting, anything unexpected. De facto, we are already, if not the member of NATO, but their definite closest ally on their right flank, the eastern flank that covers NATO countries from the strikes of potential enemy, absorbing all their resources and military might of that possible enemy. And as we're talking about the borders of Estonia, Lithuania, and Baltic countries, there were already instances when Russian helicopters and jets broke the skies of Estonia. So Russia is already implementing that aggression against the countries of Baltic Sea, and if it is not a full hot conflict yet, they're already teetering on the borderline of it. So one would be smart to pay attention to it. And NATO will be treating Ukraine with maximum appreciation and love as much as they can. We have good support from all three of them, G7, NATO, and the European Union. So this is a good, serious story for us. So Putin likely is going to visit Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and maybe even Belarus. I doubt that. That looks iffy. Very few channels mention that, and we don't know the details. It looks kind of like a false information, because first of all, I think he is afraid to leave the territory of Russia because, never know, he might get destroyed somewhere along the way, and he is somewhat focused on his persona, so he'd rather keep himself alive for a while. So that travel of DKB, the mutual defense countries, what could be the reason for that? I think he understands that the perspectives of these sanctions are not going to be sunny for Russia. So he might be going and visiting these countries to ask them to circumvent some of the sanctions, to buy some of the equipment that is blocked for Russia direct purchases now. But America and other countries already said that the moment we see any of their Russia current allies circumventing the sanctions, those countries will fall under the same sanctions themselves real fast. So he could try, but I don't think this is a winning path for him. So I think for the major part, he likely will be talking about circumventing the international sanctions. I think he already tried doing that with Uzbekistan before, especially about the military equipment. Here, how do you circumvent the sanctions? To sell counterfeit dress and stuff? No. I think he's talking about semiconductors, because there is an embargo on those, and without them, Russian military cannot really build sophisticated weapons. Don't forget also, yesterday they had a technical default, the first one. Oh yeah, it was expected, and people were expecting that to happen on the 5th of May, so they somehow managed to chug along for another month, but they finally hit that. So yeah, eventually that happened. Today, people were asking me interviews and questions in media. How long can the West be tolerating Russia's attacks on civilians? And this is not a simple task to address such behavior of Russia, but the measures are being taken, and there are some millions of funds, and there are more contracts, more support coming from Western allies. So more and more, I feel that the West, collective West, understands that they need to break back of Putin's regime, that it is not negotiable partner. All right, get it. Let me ask another question because our viewers are asking about prisoners of war. For the most part, it's Azov soldiers, and I heard that part of them, and I confirmed that information, is being kept in Lefortovo, the KGB prison. There are quite a few of them, and they were moved to Russia mainland from DNR. So after the exchange for the Julia, we mentioned a few days ago. So it does appear that they're staging a prosecution, and they're getting some of the KGB attorneys for that process. So they are preparing something. There are some good attorneys in Russia left. So those who might try to protect them as well. But there's literally no process, no court. With that escalation, with that threat for these fighters, what is the chance or the path for these soldiers to survive? International organizations are keeping an eye on them, and this is from the mouth of our military of intelligence, that there is a special operation where international groups are involved, foreign countries are involved. I don't think the escalation is about something in particular. I think it matters, the way they present it is the escalation of different events and acts against Russia on different fronts. And this is just one of the tools that Russia is using to add more heat to our society, which is free, where people are complaining and express different points of view, so they can be upset and comment on government of Ukraine not being capable to save their own people from Russia. So one needs to understand we are making everything possible, doing it to make sure we get the war fighters back. And it does take time, but this is not a secret in the meantime. This matter has been already discussed quite a few times, and we're still exchanging dead bodies of Russian soldiers, and we are following through with all these different measures. So it is very unlikely that we, in any capacity, will forget our soldiers, our Azov battalion. We will be helping them. We are helping them, trying to get to them. Not a single one of them will be forgotten. We'll be recovering all of them from Russia. Not a single prisoner of war from Ukraine is going to remain in Russia. Now, Switzerland is pushing for Russia to be acknowledged as a terrorist country, to have more levers to attack it. And even Switzerland, which is a very neutral country, they have been neutral for years. Now they're taking sides against Russia. And we are also creating different other channels for people to come back home. That Ukraine, in order to get there, if you have been a citizen, you don't need to have any special papers. You will be allowed inside. So we're working on different ways as well. I want to talk about sanctions. What can Ukraine do in response to the last missile strike? And the meeting and the mood of the G7 summit might also contribute to that opinion that, of course, everything big industrial is important, but personal sanctions are very important as well. And I know we talked about it, that McFaul-Yermak Commission is discussing a big list provided by Navalny Group about the corrupt officials in Russia who need to be sanctioned. So that is being discussed and reviewed. Personal sanctions may actually cause a huge effect on the situation. G7 did announce some sanctions against Russia, but we don't know the details. Yeah, we will figure it out. It's just the first day. Also, our president recently made a statement that Russia essentially is a terrorist country, and we are working on the stance that would acknowledge such a position for Russia, because they are using modern equipment and technology to terrorize civilians, where women, children, and elderly are dying by their choice, by their hand, by their missile. So one needs to understand that everybody involved in anything with Russia in relation to military is sponsoring with his or her own hands that terrorism. So sanctions might expedite a bit. They're trying to make it painful and touch upon gas. And one needs to also understand that Ukraine is getting some specialists who specialize in Nazis' crimes of the Second World War. So that is where the vector is going. And President of Ukraine already said that in his address that we do know all the criminals, all those people who were involved in atrocities of Bucha and other parts, and will do anything that depends on us, regardless of cost, regardless of time that it'll take, but we will find a way to punish those who as well pressed the button, who launched those missiles, who did those horrible war crimes. We'll find ways to get the law to get to them, so that retribution is coming. Okay, yeah, tomorrow there will not be a cast. I'll be here Wednesday. Tomorrow I have some other obligations. So, okay, we'll skip that tomorrow, but Wednesday, we're targeting Wednesday then. Wednesday and Tuesday, all right, at 10 p.m. And I have big ask for those almost 450,000 watching us live. Please share links to this cast in your social media and groups, and subscribe to Feygin Live and Olexiy Arestovych and the Privateer Station if you were watching that in English. There'll be other casts tomorrow, not on Alexei's, but see you soon. Thank you, Olexiy. Thank you, Mark, Kostya, dear viewers. See you the day after.